Welcome back to Life Matters. Today's episode originally aired on April 19th, 2025. Life Matters is an educational outreach resource of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska. We're honored to host a variety of guests within the pro-life movement, each bringing their own unique perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds. The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Life Matters, Assure Women's Center, or our affiliates. Our goal is to foster open, thoughtful dialogue around life-affirming issues and equip listeners to stand for life. Here is our host, Tony Clark, Executive Director of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska.
Welcome to Life Matters. Today I'm honored to be joined by Melissa Ohden, an abortion survivor, author, and advocate who has turned her extraordinary survival into a mission to give a voice to the voiceless. Melissa, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Melissa, your story is both harrowing and inspiring. Could you share with us the circumstances of your birth and how you survived the failed saline infusion abortion?
Yeah, I often remind people that, joy and pain tend to be intermingled, and we live in a culture that tries to tell us that, those two things shouldn't be together. And the reality is none of us can escape it. And that was certainly my birth mother's experience and mine. So, my birth mother fits most statistics when it comes to abortion still today. She was 19. She was a college student, actually, at the University of South Dakota. And, I now know that she was engaged to my birth father, but they weren't married. And, back in 1977, all of those things added up, unfortunately, to a family that wasn't supportive of this pregnancy out of wedlock. And, I don't think I ever could have imagined a lot of the details of my birth mother's experience or wrapped my head around my own, but I now know that her family forced her to have that saline infusion abortion. And I'm sure, like me, right, you hear these stories all the time as well. And, most women's experiences really don't fit the narrative of abortion that we hear about in the media or on social media.
Absolutely.
And so that Ruth's experience, she was forced by her family into a hospital in Sioux City, Iowa, underwent a late-term abortion.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would hope they would be disgusted if they knew how most abortions don't involve adequate exams.
Yeah.
And that was also my birth mother's experience. My abortionist had written on my medical records, he thought she was about 18 to 20 weeks pregnant with me, but he had not performed any sort of adequate exam. He clearly did not care. And so they started the saline infusion abortion that poisoned and scalded me. It should have taken my life. Should have lasted about 3 days, but in my circumstances, they lasted for 5 days because they just could not induce my birth mother's labor. And so when I was accidentally born alive and finally whisked off to the NICU by a nurse who defied orders to leave me to die, a neonatologist remarked in my medical records that I was probably about 31 weeks gestation.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Wow. Thank God for those medical professionals that, defy the orders that say this is a life and I'm going to protect that life. Wow. So they thought, he said, they thought you were between 18 and 21 weeks. Is that correct? And you were actually 31.
Yeah. And I hear that all the time from survivors and even from women. I mean, you guys go through this as well. We have women who contact us at the Abortion Survivors Network and will say, I thought I was 6 weeks. Turns out I was probably more like 11 when I took the abortion pills. And so, yeah, they didn't work because there's less efficacy. Nobody tells them that, but we can tell them that, that the efficacy drops at the 10-week mark and they fail anyway, about 1% to 8% of the time. But, we know all these things that women aren't told.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So after, you were rescued, I'm going to say rescued, what were the immediate medical concerns for you following that unexpected birth? Do you know?
People have a lot of questions about that. I mean, first of all, most survivors don't look the way anybody expects us to. I mean,
Yeah, because I would just say you're a stunningly beautiful woman. So my first thought is not you're an abortion survivor.
Right. But I can tell you my body acts like it. But, maybe that's age. I don't know. every survivor's experience is different. And I can have, two survivors who survive the same type of procedure at the same gestation, and they can have radically different outcomes. Gianna Jessen and I are a good example of that. We're about the same age, survived the same type of procedure, but she has cerebral palsy because of a lack of oxygen when she first survived. In my circumstances, I weighed a little less than 3 pounds, so I was 214, and suffered from severe respiratory liver problems. I suffered from seizures for an extended period of time. They thought I had a fatal heart defect initially because I presented with just so much distress. And so they were very guarded about what my future was going to hold, thought I would suffer from multiple disabilities if I did survive. But by the time I was, a toddler, my parents were getting clean bills of health about me. And, that's what I always want survivors and moms and even policymakers, darn it, policymakers. I want them to know there's hope even after a baby survives an abortion. It never should have been a death sentence for me, but certainly after I survived, it should not have been a death sentence. So many women are told, you don't want that baby.
Right. Wow. So you discovered the truth about your birth when you were about 14. Can you tell me a little bit about how you found out, and how did learning about that abortion survival impact you during your teen years?
Yeah, there's no really great time. I'm going to be honest. Somebody finds out that they survived an abortion, and that's part of the work that we do at the Abortion Survivors Network, is come alongside moms and adoptive families to talk about this in a very age appropriate way, and kind of do this in phases, because people need to talk about abortion first before they can ultimately talk about the fact that they survived. But my parents didn't have anybody back then. And, I think they, like most parents, think they're doing the right thing by keeping it a secret. And, survivors tend to know that there's something different about us. I never would have said, oh, this is what that is. I just felt like, yeah, I don't quite fit in, right? There's something always that's a little bit different with me. And so they kept it a secret. And I don't think they ever really thought I was going to find out, except they broke their silence about the time I was 14, telling my older sister, who was facing an unplanned pregnancy. They told her my story because she was contemplating having an abortion.
Wow.
And, my parents, fortunately or unfortunately, learned through that experience how quickly two sisters can pass along a lot of information. And so my sister got to me with it before my mom and dad did. And, in retrospect, even though it was horribly painful, I also wouldn't change it, because I needed to go through that with my family. And it put me in a position where I understand survivors and families' pain in a really, really palpable way.
Yeah. So then you tracked down your birth mom. What was that like?
I did. Sometimes people will judge me on that, and say, right, why would you go looking for the person who tried to take your life? And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, first of all, they are my flesh and blood. That will never go away for me. And I think finding out that I survived as a teenager sort of like lit that fuse of that identity for me. And so I think I felt really driven to seek answers. But, the faith part of me also said, I want them to know that I have forgiven them.
Yeah.
And so that's what really started me on that journey when I was 19. I didn't find them until I was almost 30. By then I had moved to Sioux City, Iowa to finish my master's degree. I grew up in Northwest Iowa, but I knew that's where my birth mother's abortion had taken place, in Sioux City, but never really thought that that was really going to be a big part of my life. I mean, granted, I could not walk past that hospital, couldn't really drive.
I'm sure.
But I never thought that it was really going to be a part of our family's continued trajectory. And it did end up being that way.
So what was that? I mean, what was the experience like for you? I mean, tell me a little bit of the details.
Yeah.
When you met.
Get in the dirt, huh?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think people can relate to this. Like God, right? God gives us what we can handle. And I think I'm probably one of the worst, or maybe I'm perfectly normal, where I'm like, come on, just give it to me. Like, I can handle this. I can find them. I need to know. And God's like behind the scenes going, you don't know, right? Just trust me. And so, I mean, that's really what it was like for 10 years of searching. I would find a little bit of information and it would sort of be a dead end, and it might be one little piece, and it would be enough encouragement to keep me going. But it was like God was saying, right, I'm going to unfold it. And I don't regret those years either, because I learned so much about myself and about faith and just surrendering to what his will would look like no matter what it did. And so that was I think the most amazing part for me is, when I found out who they were, it was through my medical records. And what a blessing to get medical records. Most survivors have them. And then to find out who they were in one fell swoop, it was like God was just showing up and saying, right, I wanted to do it.
And I guess that part of the story is their story to tell as well. And so, so I think that's fine. So learning about the circumstances of rebirth, I know it was a profound experience. You shared a little bit about that, but how did that knowledge influence your personal beliefs in your faith journey?
It changes everything when you find out something like surviving an abortion. It never gets old for me when I lead my team. We've heard from 2 survivors in the last week, and one of them is 60 years old. And, that's what I want people who, support abortion or are attacking abortion survivors. I want them to put themselves in our shoes to say, and how does it change your life when you find out that it was your life that was supposed to be taken by abortion? Because it impacts everything from, your self-esteem, your identity, self-worth, the lens through which you view the world. Yes, it is a beautiful thing to know that God spared your life and there's a purpose and a plan for you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't negate the pain, and our culture just keeps pouring salt on that wound when they handle abortion the way that they do. And so, it was like this constant battle against the world. And it's sort of interesting because people look at me and they go, wow, like you're like this great trauma hack. Look at how you've accomplished so much. Well, yes and no, right? It's because I've had to practice what I preach. And still today, I'm learning some really interesting things about how surviving that abortion hijacked my own body, my fight or flight. I work with survivors on this, but it doesn't mean that I'm immune from it as well. And so I'm still on this journey of having to repair my own body from what was done to me 47 years ago.
Life Matters is the program where we engage life issues with critical thinking and a biblical worldview, and it is a ministry of Assure Women's Center. We're expanding our ministry to reach women who speak only Spanish, and we need your help right now. If you've ever felt God nudging you to serve with us and you speak Spanish, this is your moment to step in. We're hiring for multiple roles and actively looking for bilingual volunteer advocates. Lives are at stake, and we can't do this without you. Visit firststeptolife.com today to learn more and get involved. That's firststeptolife.com.
You are truly a walking, I would say a walking miracle. I think, most that in God's economy, he can do anything. But when we really think about the fact that you survived, you shouldn't be here.
Right.
You are a walking miracle. And, I'm really grateful for your life and what you've been able to do to help other abortion survivors. So you founded the Abortion Survivors Network, the only organization of its kind. What inspired you to kind of expand your life and open your life up for more scrutiny, for lack of a better term, but what inspired you to kind of, launch the Abortion Survivors Network?
Yeah, it's not without scrutiny, is it? Go figure. I mean, believe it or not, I'm actually a pretty private person, and most people don't believe that. But that is like the grace of God that took my life and just kind of turned me inside out in every good way. And, I think I'm the first person to say this has been such an incredible blessing for me. As much as I didn't want to be this person at the age of 14, now I can't imagine being anybody but who God created me to be. And, part of who God made me to be is this person who sees a problem and is going to do everything they can to try to alleviate the problem. I worked in the public and private sector with a master's degree in social work. I'm a fence jumper. You know, I'm not going to stay on my side of the fence and just say, oh, look, there's a problem over there. They should probably do something about it. I'm going to jump over the fence. And so I jumped over the fence, even in the pro-life movement, started sharing my story, and everywhere I went, started to hear from other people like me. And, you know, my prayer was always the same: Lord, like, show me the person who can do something about this. And I mean, whether it's through my own, I don't know, denial or just because I was busy, it took me about 7 years of praying that prayer before finally in 2019, I went, oh my gosh, it was me all along.
Yeah. Wow. So through your work, how many abortion survivors have you connected with, and what common challenges do they face?
Over 900 survivors right now. So I was just looking through that today. And I say over 900 because we sort of had to change the way we even count our survivors, because in today's world, many of them are still in utero. They survived chemical abortions, but can't count them until they're actually born, because we know mom is at huge risk of aborting again. You know, every survivor's journey is different. Most survivors do not have the type of injuries that you expect us to. Yes, some are missing limbs, some have deformities, but most of us tend to have, you know, more of the emotional, mental, relational issues, right? Feeling very alone. That's why we are so proud of offering community at ASN, because it brings together so much healing. And, you know, I'm tending to find we have a lot of immunodeficiency issues. So our fight or flight system gets whacked in utero, right? We get hijacked. And so we spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out, oh, how do I turn that thing off? And so it presents differently from person to person. But for me, it means that I have had shingles like 17 times. I've 3 times in the last year alone. I can laugh about it now. I can't always laugh about it when it's first happening. I'm like, oh no. But it's because I can never turn off. My body always thinks that I'm in danger.
Interesting. So there's just so much that we don't know, you know. And so once again, thank you so much for sharing your story, being an abortion survivor. And so with the Abortion Survivor Network, you provide a voice for people who are survivors, and you provide a place for them to be themselves, get questions and answers, those kind of things. What other services do you provide?
We provide a lot of support that people would never begin to think about. And one of them is that we are here for women who have experienced an abortion that failed, or they stop it, or they reverse it through APR. And so we always want pregnancy centers to know, if you're encountering a woman who, especially today's world, their abortion pills have failed, you do what you do best, and then you let them know that we exist, because we have 2 social workers on staff that meet with people privately, but we also have an online community where moms get together and adoptive families have their own community as well. Because again, right, we can do so much for them, but there is just something really empowering about being with other people who are in similar shoes and bouncing questions off them. You know, even talking about guilt and shame, you know, it's one of those things where I don't think we've often thought about it. People kind of go, oh, well, isn't the woman just happy that her baby survived? No,
Yeah.
no, not initially. She's shocked, right? She's scared. She feels guilty. She feels like she has yet another problem, and she caused it by having the abortion. Like, we have to start unpacking those things to have better outcomes for mothers and survivors and families. So we offer those services and supports. We're also really getting deep into empowering people by allowing them to share their stories. And so right now we're launching a new initiative called My Body, My Voice. Yeah, okay. The Holy Spirit moment in a meeting where I was like, oh, there it is. But I love it, because it is time for folks to be able to say, what about my body and what about my voice? And so folks can go to My Body, My Voice. It's .org, and to see some of those stories. I mean, some of them are going to be of moms from here in the Midwest in particular that we serve, who are going to share stories for the first time to say, man, my experience doesn't fit the narrative you hear about when it comes to abortion. So I feel like we are in this new stage in our culture where we have to challenge the narrative.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would totally agree with you. I think about most pregnancy help organizations have a patient testimony, and even sometimes getting that patient to be willing to say, yeah, I contemplated, killing my baby or having an abortion. And so that's hard for someone to say. And so I could imagine just the guilt and shame, even from I tried to and it failed, and just feeling that, guilt and shame that they experience. And like you said, even just fear, this is not what was supposed to happen. So now that's a whole nother area of emotion that they have to process through. And once again, just grateful that your organization is there to help those women as well. So now you testified before Congress multiple times and even met with President Trump in the Oval Office in 2019. What messages do you aim to convey through these high profile platforms?
That babies survive abortions. They survived before Roe, we survived during Roe, and they're surviving after Roe, and they need to do something about it for the sake of the babies and for mothers and families. And, I think it's far too easy for them to sort of pat you on the head and be like, aren't you cute? There's like, you. No, we're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. And we need to be finding them, serving them, and we need to have policies that support moms and survivors and families. We cannot have the same talking points about this that we've had for a couple of decades.
That's good. That's good. And so for these high profile platforms and also just on a regular basis, how do you prepare emotionally and mentally to share your deeply personal story in those arenas?
A lot of prayer first and foremost. And, my incredible friends from around the world who pray for me. And I'm the first person to say, I think not only is it the grace of God, but people have been praying for me for 47 years, I am just so grateful for that. But yeah, it's a lot of prayer and a lot of preparation. I'm a strategy person. I don't think most people recognize that about me, because they kind of go, you're great at touchy-feely. Yeah, but at the end of the day, I am all about somehow seeing if X, then Y, then Z. And so that is super important to me as I prepare, and having a great team who are just gifted in their own right. And we're very mission oriented. So that makes the battle much more winnable for us.
You were talking about when you met with President Trump, and not just necessarily him, but just in general, there's only a few of you out there. How do you address the doubts and challenges regarding your story and the story of so many others that we sometimes fail to recognize?
Well, and it's really hard from a marketing standpoint. We know that people really have a hard time quantifying more than one story or person. So we really have to be diligent about how we share that. So it's about being creative, right? We find ways to insert different stories, really focusing on data that they can begin to digest, finding, one-page documents to keep giving them. And for me in particular, bringing people with me to literally show them, hey, these other 8 people here, Speaker Johnson, these are also people who survived abortions. And I'm going to let you listen to their stories because A, it gives them a voice, which is incredibly empowering. And B, those members of Congress are going to be more likely to remember them and their stories when it comes from them.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. So in 2020, I think there was an effort to air a commercial featuring abortion survivors during the Super Bowl. It was ultimately blocked. What were your thoughts on the incident?
I was very skeptical for about 6 months, if I'm going to be honest. I call myself the negative Nancy, but it's not true. I'm just a realist, I promise. We had team members who were like, yeah, this is a go, right? Boggs, we got this. And I was going, hey, we're going to do all the work on it, but I also know what's probably going to happen to us. So disappointing, but not surprising that sort of a game that was played with us of, oh, yeah. And then finally got to the point where they'd say, oh, sorry, all the commercial spots were sold. What?
Yeah.
Why did that happen? So yeah, frustrating, but I mean, I love, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately with us launching My Body, My Voice. I feel like God really gave us that experience to know that, yes, we can trust certain people, but also the only person we can trust is Him.
Yes.
And it is our job to follow His lead. And so I feel like everything we're doing with My Body, My Voice, He went, yep, right, your time is now. So it was then, you did your thing. It led you to this place, but now is God's plan.
Yeah. Well, we ultimately know why all of a sudden there were no commercial spots, because it goes against the narrative of, my body, my choice.
Yeah. So that's what I feel like God is like, yes, that's it.
I love it. I love it. So if listeners want to support the Abortion Survivors Network, what steps can they take?
Our website was revamped this fall, and there's a great page on it where it talks about how you can be an ally. So I would encourage people to go to abortionsurvivors.org, go to the page where it talks about how to be an ally, because it's going to kind of challenge you about a couple of things about how we talk about this, how we even view women who have had their abortions fail. We have to confront those things. Folks can find us on YouTube, on X, on Instagram, Facebook at the Abortion Survivors Network. And if folks have questions, or maybe they've been impacted by an abortion that didn't go the way they planned it to, please reach out to us. That is connect@abortionsurvivors.org.
Life Matters is an educational outreach resource of Assure Women's Center in Omaha, Nebraska. To learn more about the ministry of Assure, visit firststeptolife.com. That's firststeptolife.com. Thanks for listening to Life Matters. Join us again next week at the same time right here on BOT Radio Network.